Hello, grade 10 class. Welcome to the Life Orientation June Examination 2025 examination memo discussion. So the duration of the paper would be 2 hours. So the writing of the paper takes 2 hours. So the instruction and the information read as follows. It consists of 3 sections, A, B, and C. Then also 10 pages as indicated then. Then all questions in section A and B are supposed to be answered. Then you are supposed to choose 2 questions in section C. Then you start each section on a new page. The numbering system remains the same. So moving on to the first section, section A. So section A reads, various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the best correct answer and write only the letter next to the question number. For example, 1.6D. The biological qualities which differentiate men and women from each other are called. So when you're looking at the biological characteristic which differentiate between men and women, these are referred to as sex. So the correct answer for this particular question would be A. So the correct letter there, I'm going to highlight A as the correct letter. Then moving on to the next question, a group of occupations with common skills, knowledge, and work setting is known as a career. So a career is a group of occupations with common skills. A career field is it is a group of occupations with common skills, knowledge, and work setting. It is known as a career field. For example, if you choose to work in the health career field, you find that there will be people who work along the medical lines. You find your doctors, then you also find your nurses and other people as well. So a group of occupations with common skills, knowledge, and work setting is called a career field. Now moving on to the next question, which is question 1.1.3. A government uses tax contributions from working individuals, businesses, and companies to, so the purpose of the money which is collected, it is used to finance the disabled, yes, through social grants. This is actually true. Yes, this is true, through social grants. Yes, through social grants. Social grants. So this is actually true. So let's look at the other option. To finance students who cannot afford to pay college or university fees. Yes, this is true, through NSFAS. The national government also funds student NSFAS. Then to run the country and pay for infrastructure. Yes, this is correct. So our correct answer in this case will be all of the above. So if you look at all the options which we are given there, they are all true options. So the government uses tax contributions from working individuals to finance the disabled, to finance students who cannot afford to pay college or university fees, and to run the country and pay for infrastructure. So all of the above assertions are actually correct. 1.1.4, abusing your position of responsibility at work for the sake of money or dishonest gain. It is known as corruption. Yes, it is a form of corruption. It is a fraud. Yes, it is also a form of a crime. Yes. So all of the above answers are actually correct. So all of the above are correct. Then 1.1.5, self-awareness is being. So self-awareness is being is knowing yourself. It is actually knowing yourself. That is what we call self-awareness. When an individual knows themselves, they know their strength, they know their weaknesses. That is what we refer to as self-awareness. Now, moving on to the next question, 1.2, give a word or term. So for each question, we're going to give one term or one word for the following definitions. The trade of humans, most commonly for the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, and sexual exploitation, or for the trafficker or other. So this is known as human trafficking. This is known as human trafficking. When humans are traded, when they are sold, when they are moved into new places where they will be working and where they will be sexually exploited, it is known as human trafficking. So the correct answer for this question is human trafficking. Then moving on to 1.2.2, the dislike or prejudice against people from other countries is known as xenophobia. This is known as xenophobia. The dislike or the prejudice against people from other countries, it is known as xenophobia. So that is the correct answer then. Then a disease in which the body's ability to produce or respond to the hormone insulin impaired, resulting in abnormal metabolism of carbohydrates and elevated levels of glucose in blood. This is known as diabetes. This condition is known as diabetes. It is caused by the loss of the ability of the body to produce or respond to insulin. It is known as diabetes. 1.2.4, it reads, justice, the right to safe and healthy, productive and sustainable environment is enshrined in a document. This is found, or these rights are found in a document which is known as the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights contains all the basic human rights, which are the rights to safe, healthy, productive, and sustainable environment. This is found in a document called the Bill of Rights. Now, moving on to 1.2.5, justice in terms of distribution of wealth and opportunities and privileges within a society. So when there's justice in terms of distribution of wealth and opportunities and privileges, that is known as social justice. We refer to that as social justice. This is known as social justice. That is the correct answer. Then now, these questions, they need to be answered in full sentences. What is meant by diversity? Use an example to explain your answer. So diversity refers to the variety. Diversity refers to the variety of aspects which make us human, which makes us human. So this is the variety of aspects which makes us human. For example, South Africa has different cultures. South Africa has a variety of races, people of different color and cultures. South Africa is a variety of races and cultures living side by side. You find that in South Africa, there are black people, there are colored people, there are also Asian people. We also have black people and white people living side by side. So that is an example of diversity. So diversity refers to the variety of aspects which makes us human. For example, South Africa is a variety of races, cultures, living side by side. So that is a typical example of what we call diversity. Then moving on to formal assessment. So formal assessment refers to school-based assessments also known as SBAs. As SBAs, which contribute to your learners' marks. They contribute to learners' yearly marks. So these SBAs, they contribute to a learner's yearly mark. So examples of that, we have tests, e.g. the March test. We have mid-year junior examinations, exam, We also have projects and assignments. So all these which are written in green are examples of school-based assessments, or they are examples of formal assessments. So these are given to learners during the course of the year. Then they are recorded on the mark sheet, and they contribute to a learner's yearly marks. Now, moving on to 1.3.3, which I would write using a difference in color so that we can draw a difference there. Give 2 reasons why time management skills are important. So I'm going to write the 2 reasons why time management skills are important. So they allow people to do more work in less time. It allows learners to do more work in less time. Instead of spending more time doing a simple thing, you can actually do more things in less time. So time management skills, they reduce distractions. This reduces distractions or disturbances from others. Then it also enables a sense of achievement after attaining a goal. It enables a sense of achievement after attaining a goal. For example, you can tell yourself that by the end of the week, you'd have finished completing a life orientation project. So once you accomplish that goal, you feel a sense of achievement. So that is an example of a positive benefit of time management. Now moving on to 1.3.4. 1.3.4, it reads, my teacher only allows boys to move desks and open the car and fetch books. She does not think girls are capable of such chores. They have to sweep the classroom and fetch their glasses of water. Should girls be prevented from doing such chores? Give your answer. No. Should girls should receive the same treatment as boys. So girls should receive the same treatment as boys. So gender roles cause gender inequality. So they should do away with gender roles simply because they result in gender inequality. So this brings us to the end of this particular section, which is section A. Now we are moving on to section B. So section B, it needs us to study the map of Africa, which is below, and answer the questions that follow. So this is basically a map of Africa. The heading is people living in extreme poverty in Africa. The percentage of population living on less than $1.90 a day. So we have the likes of Algeria, we also have Libya, Egypt, and several other countries. So the question reads, we also have a legend or a key of interpreting this particular map. So the question reads, which countries are mostly affected by poverty? So I think in order to find these countries, you should look at them, the dark pink shaded part. So if you look at the dark pink shaded part, you come across countries such as Madagascar. So Madagascar will be country number 1. Madagascar. Then we also have DRC, which is DR Congo. In addition to that, we have Mozambique as well. We also have Malawi, and to some extent Zambia. So those are the countries which are mostly or severely affected by poverty. Now, moving on to the next question, 2.1.2. List the 5 harmful effects of poverty, and why do you think people mostly affected countries could suffer from? And what do you think people from mostly affected countries would suffer from? So they would suffer from malnutrition. They would suffer from malnutrition. They would suffer from diseases such as kwashiorkor. Then we also have things like malnutrition. Then we also have poor access to health and education. We also have things like poor access to health and education. Poor access to health and education. Access to education and health. In addition to that, we can talk about the issue of lack of basic needs. Lack of basic needs. Then in addition to that, this might result in lack of food and starvation. It can also result in lack of food or you can say it results in starvation. People who die of hunger. So moving on to 2.1.3, how to overcome personal poverty. So the first thing which you can do to overcome personal poverty, you fight gender inequality. To get educated, you need also to get educated. Then in addition to that, we can also start innovation. Innovation is coming up with new ideas. Innovation. All these things can be used to overcome personal poverty. Now, we have an image there of people who are living in poverty. So how many people are undernourished in sub-Saharan Africa? So we have to go back to our image there. If you look at the number of people who are undernourished in sub-Saharan Africa, it is roughly 27.7%. Then discuss why there is more food insecurity in some parts of the world than the other. So this is caused by natural disasters. It can also be a result of climate change. When we experience droughts as well. Then another thing, war and conflict. Countries with war and conflict, they have more hunger than countries which are peaceful. So war and conflict is another issue. Then we also have unequal power relations. You can also include unequal power relations. They can result in this, unequal power relations. Then in addition to that, looking at the picture of the above of the hungry children in Africa, how do you feel when you feel this photo? This type of photo, if you look at it, it comes with so many emotions. You can see the ribs are coming out. The children are full of misery. They are malnourished. Then there is also, if you look at the health-wise, they are not looking well. So there are so many emotions which come into play here. So the first emotion which comes into play, you feel a sense of pity. Then sympathy. You feel sorry for these children. Then in addition to sympathy, you also feel an element of, besides pity, sympathy, there's an element of anger. Why are they going through such? Then there's an element of shame. Times you become ashamed of being African simply because this is actually taking place in Africa. Then there's also an element of anger, sadness. It brings also sadness to our hearts. This actually weighs down heavily on our hearts. So such type of a picture, it brings sadness into us. So how does lack of food affect children in poor countries? So the lack of food, it affects children in so many ways. So kids, or we can call them children rather, children suffer from malnourishment. So children would suffer from malnourishment. That is point number one. In addition to that, we have a situation whereby the children would also have stunted growth. They won't grow. Stunted growth, it is limited growth whereby they don't grow properly. So they also have learning difficulties. They are unable to focus in class simply because of hunger. Then they would also have an element of self-hate and low self-esteem. Then there is also poor health, or we can also, this is as a result of decreased immunity. They cannot fight, their body's immune system cannot fight diseases. So this results in decreased immunity. So these are the negative consequences of malnutrition. Now we have question 3. Read the source below and answer the questions that follow. We have now declared a national state of disaster in terms of the Disaster Management Act. This will enable us to have an integrated and coordinated disaster management mechanism that will focus on preventing and reducing the outbreak of this virus. We will also be able to set up emergency, rapid, and effective response systems to mitigate the severity of its impact. Following an extensive analysis of the progression of the disease worldwide in South Africa, Cabinet has decided on the following measures. Firstly, to limit contact between persons who may be infected and South African citizens. We are imposing a travel ban on foreign nationals from high-risk countries such as Italy, Iran, South Korea, Spain, Germany, and the United States and the United Kingdom, and China as from 18 March 2020. Fake news will not be tolerated, and anyone found guilty of spreading fake news shall have to face consequences. Misleading public using social media is a criminal offense. So this was adopted from President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech on the 15th of March 2020. Now moving on to the actual question itself. Questions should be answered in full sentences and presented in paragraph form. So the question reads, give 3 symptoms of COVID-19. So symptoms of COVID-19, this is 3.1. Okay. COVID-19 symptoms include high fever or high temperature, high temperatures, temperature. It also included things like severe headaches, then we also had flu-like symptoms. Then in addition to that, vomiting, or you can call it nausea. In addition to that, we have also things like such as sweating, and sweating. Then explain why COVID-19 was regarded as a pandemic. It was regarded as a pandemic because it affected several people, actually millions of people worldwide. It affected several people worldwide. Then in addition to that, there was high mortality, high death rate of affected people or infected. People who would get COVID-19, they were actually affected negatively. Then in addition to that, we also had things like it led to unemployment and other things. Illustrate 4 strategies that have been implemented by national government to flatten the national curve. So for this question, which is 3.2, I would have to write it there. The national government restricted the movement of people. So the first thing which they did was to restrict the movement of people. All right. Shops, schools were shut down. Public gatherings were prohibited. Public gatherings were prohibited. Then in addition to that, we also have the enforcement of wearing of masks. Masks became compulsory and sanitizing hands. Okay. That answers that particular question. Then moving on to 3.3. Fully justify the limitations. So to justify, I would explain that to justify is to give the reasons, the limitations to freedom of expression by the South African government around fake news on the COVID-19. So there were limitations to what people could post. All right. Okay, so we are going to say that freedom of speech freedom of speech or expression, let's call it expression rather. Freedom of expression was limited in order to stop the spread of fake news fake news would have made people to panic unnecessarily, and it would increase the spread of the virus. In addition to that, We can also say that the government wanted to avoid unnecessary panic. The government wanted to avoid a frenzy of panic. So that was the intention of the government. So no wonder why they avoided they did not want people to panic unnecessarily. So that's why they reverted to that. So that brings us to the end of 3.3. Now let's move on to section C, where the question says choose any two questions from this section. So read a case study about human trafficking before you answer the question. So it reads, many teenagers are not aware of the crime of human trafficking. They also don't realize what a big market this has become, not only in South Africa, but all over the world. Human trafficking is the illegal use of human beings for labor, such as hard work in shops and in building constructions and sexual purposes, for example, prostitution, child pornography, and sex brothels. So I would also want to highlight this part. Human trafficking is the illegal. So this is a definition of human trafficking. So it's a modern day kind of slavery. The women and the children are the ones mostly affected by it. Human trafficking victims always suffer from repeated abuse, torture, and threats. Cindy Square, a 16-year-old learner from Eastern Cape, was orphaned. She was begging to make a living. She was offered work by a woman in her town who drove her to Bloemfontein. She was sold to a drug and trafficking ring in exchange for cocaine, a dangerous drug. Cindy Square was not the only girl sold on that day. The buyer told Cindy Square that she had to sell herself in the streets and so force herself into prostitution. When she and other girls tried to run away, they were beaten up. Cindy Square worked as a prostitute for less than a year before she discovered she was HIV positive. When she was too sick to stand, the buyer threw her out on the streets without any care for her well-being. She was hospitalized and told that she had HIV and TB. The doctor says she had only a few weeks left to live. So this was taken from a magazine called The Move, 20 April 2011. Explain the term human trafficking and give 4 reasons why people are used for human trafficking. So already we do have a definition of human trafficking there. So human trafficking is the illegal use of human beings for work, prostitution, and pornography. So the illegal use of human beings for work, for prostitution, and for pornography. That is human trafficking. Then, moving on to the next question, a number of Cindy Square's rights were being violated in the case study. Critically evaluate which rights were being violated. So the first thing, if we look back in the case study, there are quite a number of rights which were violated. So the first one, it was the right to health. Why do we say so? She was forced into prostitution, which affected her health. So the right to health was infringed upon. Then in addition to that, we have the second right, the rights to human dignity. She was forced to do inhumane activities. She was forced into doing inhumane work, work which is not fit for a human being. Then let's go to the next right which was infringed upon. Then she also freedom of the right to freedom of movement. The rights to freedom of movement. Then in addition to that, we also need to add that she was also silenced. So the freedom of speech was also infringed upon. She could not speak her mind. She could not voice her anger. She could not voice her frustrations. So the right to freedom of speech was also infringed. Then, so freedom of movement simply because she could not move, could not escape. She couldn't escape. Then in addition to that, freedom of movement. So all these are rights which were infringed upon. Now, moving on to the next question, examine three ways that can be done to oppose or prevent human trafficking. So in order to prevent human trafficking, we should educate learners. 4.3. Okay, learners should be taught to be suspicious of strangers. So you must be suspicious of strangers and job offers which are too good to be real. So learners should be taught to be suspicious and also to be suspicious of strangers and also job offers which are too good to be real. So then in addition to that, speak out when you notice suspicious behavior. So when you notice suspicious behavior, you need to speak out. In addition to that, you need to do research before accepting offers. Do not just accept offers, but do your own research before you accept offers. So I'll go through the key points once again. So if you look at this particular question, so the rights which were violated is the right to health. She was forced into prostitution, then which affected her health. The right to human dignity, she was forced into doing inhumane activities. Then the right to the freedom of movement, she couldn't escape. The right to freedom of speech was also infringed upon. So examine three ways that can be done to oppose and prevent human trafficking. Learners should be taught to be suspicious of strangers and job offers which are too good to be real. Speak out when you notice something which is suspicious. Then do your own research before accepting offers. In addition to this, also, learners should participate in campaigns participate in human to in anti learners should participate in campaigns opposing human trafficking. Learners should participate in campaigns opposing human trafficking. So in addition to this, we need to move on to the next question. All right, the next question reads, know your HIV and AIDS status. So the extract reads, the Department of Health and Basic Education are implementing voluntary HIV testing in schools. The initiative forms part of a campaign aimed at ensuring that all South Africans know their HIV status. This will help everyone to receive treatment and help to stop the spread of HIV. The sooner we know our HIV status, this will help everyone to receive treatment and help to stop the spread of HIV. The sooner we know our HIV status and take medication, the easier it is to stop the spread of HIV. To encourage all South Africans to know their status, the health department is to now taking its HIV counseling and testing campaigns to youth at high school level. The campaign is a preventative strategy that tries to help young people to understand the link between their sexualities, their sexual relationship, and the choice they make around sexualities. One of the choices is that you need to know your status, explained Tovile Mbengashe, Chief Director for HIV, AIDS, and STI at the National Department of Health. So this was adapted from www.sfaids.net content. Then the first question, explain why is it important to know your health status and explain why some people are scared to go for HIV testing. Suggest 4 effects of discrimination against people who are HIV positive or living with AIDS. So the importance of knowing your status. All right. So I'm going to start to write the response here. Knowing your status is important because it allows you to determine whether you need treatment or not. So it allows you to determine whether you need treatment or not. That is the first thing. So it is important. So if you know your status, you can limit the spread of the virus by not engaging in unprotected sex. So if you know your status, it simply means that you would avoid engaging in unprotected sex, which would put others at risk. So those are the 2 reasons why it is important for you to know your HIV status. Then why are people scared of knowing their status? Many people are scared of knowing their status Many people are scared of knowing their status. Many people are scared of knowing their status because there are several misconceptions about being HIV positive. So some people, they also fear the stigma associated with the virus, with HIV. So they are afraid of the stigma which is associated with HIV. Then in addition to that, we also need to move on to the next bullet. So the next bullet requires us to discuss, that's 5.2, effects of discrimination. So discrimination results in withdrawal and isolation. It results in withdrawal and isolation of the HIV positive people. So it results in withdrawal and isolation. Then in addition to that, it also results in other things like low self-esteem, in low self-esteem, people would end up not having high self-esteem. Then in addition to that, we can also add that people become scared, victims become scared, and vulnerable. They become scared and vulnerable. Then moving on to the next part of the question. All right, suggest how people living with HIV/AIDS can be protected from discrimination. So people can be protected through the following ways. HIV positive people can be protected in the following ways. So the first thing, through educating people about the realities of HIV. So it can be done through educating people about the realities, not telling them things which are not real. So you need to educate the people. Then people should have open conversations, open discussions about HIV/AIDS without judging one another. Open discussions about HIV and AIDS. Open dialogue should be encouraged. Then in addition to that, we can also add that people should have open discussions. Then we also have, we should start support groups led by celebrities. So all this can help in fighting stigma and discrimination. All right. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question also requires us to read the scenario below and answer the questions. So we have the scenario whereby Miriam was in grade 10 and wanted to study to be a mechanic one day. She always had a passion for cars. Her mother said that she would just finish grade 12 and find a job as a secretary because being a mechanic is a man's job. Miriam's father said that people, especially men, would never let her work on their cars. Her friend advised her to marry a rich man and have a lot of babies. There was also no money for her to study because her parents were saving to send her brother, who was in grade 12, to university. So that is the sad story of Miriam. Explain what stereotype means and give 4 examples from this article. So there are so many examples of stereotypes there. So a stereotype can be defined as moving on to the questions. Critically evaluate, explain what stereotype means and give 4 examples in this from the article. So I'll start by defining the term stereotype. A stereotype is a false belief that people with certain common traits or characteristics behave in the same way. So basically, a stereotype is a false belief that people with certain common traits or characteristics behave in a particular way. So from the extract there are quite a number of stereotypes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight the stereotypes them using red ink. So there are quite a number of stereotypes there. So let's go back to the extract. All right. Her mother said that she should just finish grade 12 and find a job as a secretary because being a mechanic is a man's job. So that's where we find stereotype number 1. So this is our stereotype. A certain belief that girls cannot become mechanics because it's simply referred to as a man's job. So that is stereotype number 1. Then let's look at the father. Miriam's father said that people, especially men, would never let her work on her cars. So stereotype number 2, the father is also adding another stereotype there. So this is the second stereotype which we find in the extract. So this is stereotype number 2. Then her friend advised her to marry a rich man and have lots of babies. That's also another stereotype coming from the friend as well. Coming from her friend as well. The friend advised her to have to marry a rich man so that they can also have plenty of babies. So this is stereotype number 3. The belief that ladies, in order for them to succeed, or the girl child, in order for her to succeed, she must get married to rich people, which is false. Then also, there was also no money for her to study because her parents were saving for her brother who was in grade 12 so that the brother can also go to university. So from this, we can tell that the parents, they felt that the brother deserved to go to university much more than the girl. So this is stereotype number 4. So these are the 4 stereotypes which we find in the extract there. These are the 4 stereotypes. 1, she couldn't find a job as a secretary because it was considered to be a man's. She should find a job as a secretary because being a mechanic is a man's job, which is not true. Then men would never let her work on their cars, which is also not true. Then her friend advised her to marry a rich man and have lots of babies, which is actually wrong because her parents were also saving money to send her brother. So those are the stereotypes which we find from the extract. Now, going on to the next bullet, critically evaluate the stereotype people have about any four careers and explain why people would have such stereotypes. So, the first stereotype, we can talk about the first career, which will be the mining industry. Is not okay. The mining industry is stereotyped as a male industry. So the first industry is the mining industry. So there is a stereotype that only men can work in the what? In the mines. Why? Perhaps this as a result of the legacy of colonialism. Then we also have sports in careers such as soccer, sports careers, e.g., soccer and rugby. Why do people have this stereotype? There is a false belief that it requires muscle power. Then in addition to that, we also have other careers such as there are so many other careers which we can also manufacturing, and industry because of colonialism. Then we also have care work. It is considered to be female because of colonial legacies again, colonial biases. So that is the third part. Then now let's go to explain why Miriam wanted to become a mechanic and suggest what she can do to oppose the stereotype. So Marian wanted to become a mechanic because that was her vocation. So in a way, it's a calling. That was her vocation. Perhaps she easily understood technical systems and was good at vocational work. So she can go to a vocational training. She can go to a vocational training college In addition to that, she can go to a vocational training college. Then, in addition to that, she could also do things like, besides going to a vocational training college, she could go for a learnership or apprenticeship. She could go for a learnership or apprenticeship. That's how she could, or she could volunteer at a car garage. So that's how she could address this problem. So Marianne wanted to become a mechanic because okay, it's repetition of because there. So let's remove one because. She wanted to become a mechanic because that was her vocation. That was her calling. Her vocation, perhaps she easily understood technical systems and she was good at vocational work. She can go to a vocational training college. She could also go for a learnership or apprenticeship. She could volunteer at a local garage. So that's how she can actually address this issue. So this brings us to the end of this particular paper. Thank you for being part of my audience. So see you in the next discussion where we'll be discussing another different paper. Wish you the best of luck in your exams. Thank you.